Live from the chicken wing capital of the world, Buffalo, New York. You're listening to the Childcare Bridge podcast, your source for the best tips, tools, and tactics on how to market and grow your childcare center, ensuring total domination. Total domination. This is the Childcare Bridge, and this is your host, Michael Tasner.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Childcare Bridge. Today's topic is all about acquiring new centers. So one of the things that is very common amongst all the different centers that my agency, the Parent Marketing Group, works with is that these centers want to grow. The owners want to acquire more locations or open more locations because they know that once you've kind of gotten one location down, we're going to come back to that in just a minute. The second, the third, the fourth, assuming that there's a lot of things that are created equal and stay equal, it becomes a little bit more of economies of scale. Like it's a lot easier to open your second location than opening your first. You're learning all the different things. You're dealing with licensing. Like there's a lot of craziness when it comes to having that first location. But what I wanted to do was share some of the things that I've seen day in and day out from centers that have came to us and said, hey, Michael, should I buy XYZ location? What should I look for? How do I find these centers? All the other fun stuff that kind of goes with this. And I have a feeling this is going to end up being a multi-part podcast because there's a lot. But I at least wanted at a 10,000 foot view to allow you to start to kind of get your creative mind flowing with what the opportunity is as of today. So the first thing is, this is not financial advice. I have to give this disclaimer. Most people are not in a position to acquire a new location. And when I look at everything on the table, before I start to give any information, I need to know that their first location is rock solid. Because what could happen is your second location or your third, however many you have, if you start to run into a couple of snags, which you will, that could end up sinking your first location. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, you are in the worst spot that you ever have been in. And it all stemmed to adding that second location. So for me, the first piece before we even get into how do you do this and should you and all that is you need to look everywhere across your center and know that you have the 4 M's completely lined up, tied up in a bow. Your marketing is working on fire, meaning that's producing leads, which convert to tours, to enrollments, as much as you need. You've got a wait list. You don't have a bunch of classrooms that are brand new and are completely open. The second one, the second M, your money. You are making a healthy profit margin. You're making at bare minimum 10 to 15% net. Not gross, but net. And that also factors in that you have taken a salary out of that as well. It's not 10 to 15% net, and then you get a salary. So your financials need to be well done, well organized, but you need to be making a profit. You need to have some money in the bank. You need to have a runway that in knowing that things are going to go wrong. Something's going to break. Enrollments aren't going to come as fast as you want. You're going to have to hire faster or slower. Like things are going to occur that you did not plan for. I have never seen an acquisition go completely smoothly with zero surprises. It just does not happen. So you've got your marketing working. It's firing on all cylinders. You've got tours. You've got leads. All that great stuff is moving. Your money, you've got money in the bank, healthy profit margins, you're good there. The third one is your manpower. You have great staff, a good culture, people are happy, and you know that you can scale up as you need more team. And then finally, your methodologies. You have all of your processes and systems documented. You have a guidebook that's internal, not a parent handbook, but a guidebook for your team. There's checklists for everything. You've got all of that stuff dialed in and perfect. If you can answer yes to every single one of those, like right away, not like, let me think about it, then and only then should you look at adding another location. Now, for me, the opportunity that I'm seeing right now is most centers are not not run well, but they're not typically run by business people that have high senses of business acumen. They're run by parents that wanted to have a location for their kids, and they really started to like this, and now they want to grow a little bit and make it into a bit more of a legitimate business. I have seen just so many of these centers that I go in, the numbers are completely backwards, the cost of labor is through the roof, there's non-profitable ratios in every single classroom, they're behind in all their paperwork, they're not following up with leads. I see this all the time. Now, the opportunity with those types of centers is that if you have the business acumen, if you have the savvy, if you have the bandwidth by way of time, you can start to turn those centers around and start to move the levers. And more often than not, I can tell you that we have had, I don't want to say hundreds, but I would probably say at least I can think of in the last year or two, probably 50 plus centers that we're working with basically get handed a location. Here you go. For nothing, zero, zilch, literally handed everything. You can take all the stuff that's in there, everything that I've bought, playground equipment, it's all yours. I just want you to take over the lease. And they do that because they're losing money and they've most likely run out of cash. So those can be very interesting for takeover because you're getting all this free stuff, but you have to understand the risks. If you walk in month one, you lose $50,000 because you've got a insane lease, which is, that would be a very high lease, but just a ridiculous lease. Labor costs are through the roof. You don't have very many enrollments, and you're like, I think I'm getting this amazing thing. Month one, I lose 50 grand. Month two, I lose 30. Month three, I lose 25. And all of a sudden you look back and, geez, I just lost 100 grand. That was my safety net that I had in the bank. Now that's down to zero. And month four, we're forecasted to lose 20,000. You're going to be sunk. So while those can often be a gift, you have to have the savvy, you have to have the gumption, the ability, like a thick skin to go in and bring down an axe and say, this is a complete turnaround. And we're gonna have to let a lot of staff go from day one. We're gonna have to renegotiate the lease. But if you are able to successfully do that, you might have a lease that was $20,000 a month, you get down to 10 for the next 6 months. And you go in and you are able to bring some of your team over, you fix some of the ratios, and you let 2 teachers go, for example, because you're better optimized with your ratios and your classrooms, and now all of a sudden you just saved another $8,000 a month. So with a snap of a hat, you just saved $18,000 a month. So maybe month one, you only lose $10,000, for example, and you start to deploy your systems and you have right-size things. It can be very, very rewarding and very, very lucrative if you can turn it around. But you have to be on point. You have to have the time. You have to be able to watch the numbers like a hawk. You have to be able to invest in marketing. And therein lies where I see those mistakes getting made. You walk in and they're bleeding cash. How can you fix that without having to cut things? You fix that by doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling the marketing. You drive more leads, which drive more tours, more enrollments, more cash. But unfortunately, a lot of people that have acquired locations, they go in, they get rid of the teachers, they slash this, they cut that program, they change the hours around, they maybe invest a little bit in the classrooms, but they should have a healthy budget to start marketing. If you haven't understood by now, everything that I talk about in almost every episode is that marketing drives everything. You have got to make sure that you have money in that budget to deploy towards marketing anytime you take over and or add another location. Now, while I love kind of taking over struggling locations, the better or more advisable strategy is to acquire locations that are doing well. Now, the advantage to this is that there is a lot less anxiety, a lot less nervousness that you're having to come in and shake stuff up immediately. But you're going to have the capital or some ways to get these deals financed. Now, seller financing is definitely an option, and I have seen a lot of those deals, but most of the centers that we've worked with that have acquired another location from a location that is doing well have had to have some capital to acquire the building, for example. So you've had to go and get a loan so you could buy the building. And they've used things like SBA loans, but you still need to have some capital and some cash. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that similarly to centers that are struggling that you take over and having surprises, you're going to have surprises with a center that's doing really well. What if there were a couple of teachers that were promised some heavy raises that the center never wanted to do? What if a director is getting ready to retire? The way that you protect yourself against all of these potential issues, or at least start to mitigate them, is by having a really robust due diligence checklist and process. And that is where I want you to start to focus. So step one is you need to make sure that your center is completely tied up in a bow. Once you've checked those 4 M's, marketing, money, manpower, methodologies, you've got those 4. You're like, Michael, I've got it. We got money in the bank. We're making good profits. Things are flowing. Team is happy. Culture is good. Things are documented. You want to spend some time on this due diligence checklist. Now, I'll link my due diligence checklist in here for you. It's extremely robust. And it involves you interviewing every single one of the team members. It involves double checking all the licensing details, all the stuff that's available publicly without you having to get a lot of that stuff from the center owner. It has a very deep dive into financials for the last 3 years, including the current year. It's got a lot of stuff on there that you are going to request of the owner. Now, if they start to hesitate, I don't have this stuff, I don't want to get it to you, that traditionally is a red flag. Unless you know what you are buying, what if there's some surprise on the financial books that you're going to find out a couple of months later that there's a balloon payment for the playground equipment, for example, and they snuck that into the contract and somehow it got missed? Like, I have seen all of these things happen. Now, this is not meant to be a legalese presentation by any means, but that piece of going through the due diligence, checking different things off, I've analyzed and other people have analyzed the financials, the licenses, the contract that they're signing with us, the lease agreements, the building has been inspected, all those different things. There's a lot of steps that you have to take before you get that location under your belt. And I can tell you the mistakes that I have made for any acquisition, and I've now done 6, has been when I have rushed a deal because I thought it was just such a great deal that I wanted to get it under contract and buy it immediately. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, crap, I missed this. And these normally are not small misses. You're not going to miss, well, geez, I didn't realize that they just purchased a $1,000 computer and I was responsible for giving that $1,000. That's not going to be the miss. It's going to be, yikes, new cameras were just installed across the entire building at 30 grand. And you are having to assume that particular invoice because now it's your location and the seller's not going to benefit anymore. So they snuck that in there. And oops, I didn't realize that when I did my building inspection and went through my checklist. So you have to slow roll this a little bit. Now it's that balancing act of slow roll, but also if there is a potential opportunity that there could be a lot of bidders, you're going to have to move that needle a little bit. But I would highly suggest not starting to compromise your due diligence. The opportunities that I'm seeing right now, yes, there's a lot of struggling centers, but those, again, require a lot of effort. I would rather you start to find the center owners that are tired. They've been doing this for 25, 30, 40 years. No one in their family wants it, and they just want a clean break, but they would love to see this legacy continue. And I'll talk about in future episodes kind of how you can negotiate and get great terms. And really, it's about figuring out what they want out of the transaction, not what you want. But that is where I'm seeing the opportunity. There's a lot of owners that are just tired. They've built a really great business, but they don't have the bandwidth to take it to more locations or take it to the next level or do a rebrand or start finally investing in marketing. A lot of these centers have just grown by word of mouth. And if you now have this proven marketing system that you can deploy and you know that they've got 80 enrollments, but they got capacity for 150 and they've never wanted to go above 85, but they never wanted to invest in marketing. So you can plug your system in and blow that up. And they're already making money and the numbers look good. I would do those deals all day, every day. My hypothesis, and from what I'm seeing, is that the next 12 months are going to be the best time to acquire another location. That is how you can grow your legacy. That is how you can grow your footprint. Because if you buy these right, if you go through the process correctly, if you start to move that needle, and then you add a second location, you get that location humming, you're making money, your systems are working, your team is happy, you can rinse and repeat. And those are the center owners that I've seen go from 1 location to 10 locations in 2-3 years. Now you've got a $1 million business that goes to a $10 million business. And now you have economies of scale, and that business now becomes extremely valuable. That is ripe for takeover by a much larger organization that's going to pay you a ton of money. Get out there, start looking, start networking, going on the Facebook pages. I love to do cold email. I scrape lists of all the owners in particular cities, and I draft emails. If you're ever thinking about selling, let me know. I have relationships with all the realtors and lease spaces that have all the buildings, and they let me know first if someone is potentially thinking of getting out of the lease, defaulting on a lease. I get a call, then I approach the owner. You've got to start working that network, and it almost becomes its own business where you are having to continue to find these people, work your system. But I can tell you that when done right, this is the fastest way to grow your footprint and grow your wealth. Get out there, take some action, and at least for the fun of it, start looking at a potential center to buy so you can go through the motions and see how their numbers compare to yours and what are they doing differently. You'll start to educate yourself so that when the time is right, you can strike. Michael Tasner signing off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'll see you next week.